Welcome to Summer Camp 2024 by No Revisions. This summer, we're talking to our service providers about trends and what it takes to be successful in their respective crafts. Today, we have Cameron Stefanski, who is a founder and CEO of 989 Creative Group, a marketing agency for entrepreneurs, social impact brands, and nonprofit organizations. He also works with us on our LGBTQIA plus marketing strategy services. Cameron, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Anna. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I can't believe Pride Month came and went and all the things and it's already like 6 months through the 2024 and whoa. So much going on all over the place. But just keep it moving forward every day.
Yeah, I feel like that is such a good point. Like June has come and went, and I feel like I don't know where I was while like June was here. Um, I think in the summer I really try to enjoy myself with vacation and going outside. But then it's like when I'm working, I'm like, oh shit, we're halfway through the year. Like, what have I accomplished? What do I need to get done? So summer's always a really weird time. But speaking of Pride Month, I feel like I didn't notice, and maybe I just wasn't on social media as much or something, but I feel like I didn't really notice too much from brands this year. Did you notice anything? Or that's still
I I believe that lots of brands were very quiet this year. I think we've seen in the last, year and a half, lots of different brands from different industries struggle with PR in regards to inclusive campaigns. An example that comes to mind is something like Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney. Not to point fingers or do anything thing like that or blame, but that really spiraled a lot of brands into kind of hiding behind appeasing their customers because I feel in like the marketing world and especially in like consumerism, brands tend, their customer service based. So they're trying to appease their customer through that lens of like the customer's always right. Um, and I feel like a lot of brands, that's their end game is that's what they have to rely on to move forward. And so there are brands out there that are talking the talk and walking the walk through really great inclusive partnerships with content creators and campaigns and supporting different pride activities, not just in June, but all year long, and really investing in LGBTQ plus entrepreneurship and also LGBTQ plus brands. I think like one big thing to me that big corporate, big box brands especially, and brands across the board of any size really can do is uh, what is the long term cost benefit analysis of being a inclusive and socially driven brand, right? So what's the data behind the story? Like I think brands miss the mark on looking at the very large investment that queer and trans people have in the market within their industry. Because statistically, it's reported that the LGBT plus community has over $1 trillion in market share across like varying industries. So I think that it's really brands should be investing in how they can be better at that because to be quite transparent and frank, it's just going to make them more money. Like
Yeah.
I don't know how else to like scoot around that one.
Yeah, that's so funny. That was actually somewhat of a conversation that came up with one of a brand I'm working on right now of what the founders are comfortable with marketing to versus, hey, but these people are buying your products and we can sell more if we speak directly to them type of thing. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's very interesting. But I think Typically the common denominator is money for people, and it's sad to say like that might be something that drives who we're marketing to or how we're marketing, but marketing is all about making money. But
Mhm.
I think, and especially where I want some of the conversation today to go is like, why is this important in the bigger scheme of your brand versus just what you're posting on social media or just what you might be doing for Pride Month? And to back up, like I honestly forgot about the Bud Light Dylan Mulvaney thing. Was that just last year or was that a few years ago?
I think it was just last year. I
That's
don't even think
crazy.
it's been a
Yeah.
year. It might have been just a year now. Like, it
Yeah.
might have been around, like, pre-Pride last year,
Yeah.
during Pride. I can't remember specifically, but I feel like we had discussed it in our, LGBTQIA marketing services group, um,
Yeah.
like, earlier in this year, that it had
Yeah.
happened last year, so.
Yeah, that's just so crazy. I feel like that felt like a lifetime ago, and I guess like, and I think Dylan doesn't post as much as she used to, but I feel like that just seems so long ago, and I know a lot has changed with her and how she's approached social media. So I'll have to look back into that because I
Mhm.
completely forgot about that. So I know we dove right in, but I love for you to kind of tell everybody a little bit about your background and what you're currently working on.
Yeah, I would love that. Thanks again for having me today. And I just want to say really quick before I dive into all that is also inclusive marketing for marginalized communities is also super nuanced, right? This is a conversation that we could have, and it's a big part of my ethos. Is it's a nuanced conversation, and there's a true finesse to the intersectionality of marketing between varying communities, right? So, for example, like marketing to trans people might be different than marketing to queer or LGBT people. Like, there's so many microcosms of just the LGBTQ plus community, let alone like other marginalized communities. So I think it's important to, like you mentioned, looking at that. What is the overall impact across, the long-term strategy for brands, right? And so that's a big part of my ethos. And so things that I'm working on, I founded and operate a marketing firm, 99 Creative Group, and we work specifically with entrepreneurs and social impact brands and nonprofit organizations. We offer an array of marketing management and strategy services, from social media to website design, to consulting on brand strategy to brand identity. Um, we really try to start brands with strategy and brand identity because we believe that how you visually communicate your brand is where you need to have a structure and foundation first before you ever invest in social, video, web, all those things. So that's kind of just my spiel and my, mission and vision. But a sibling of 989 Creative Group and a lifestyle brand that I also founded, the Rainbow Cloud Project. We have a new sibling named MKTG for Pride 365, and that's marketing for Pride 365. And it's been an initiative that's been on my heart for years. And I finally just sat down and was like, I'm gonna put this out in the world and start to grow it and nurture it and build it. And we hosted our first live virtual event panel. We had some amazing panelists. Uh, right before Pride Month, I think it was May 29th, but it's on YouTube. You can watch it back if you just search MKTG for Pride 365. And we really discussed, kind of this conversation we're having today, from uh, different gay and trans individuals. Were on the call, all mostly from the marketing, communications, and branding, and entrepreneurship realms, if you will. But it was a really great session. Highly encourage it if it's something that resonates with you to check it out. And we're going to be launching a new community, uh, for marketers who find this, who resonate with this vision and who want to learn more from professionals in our field. We're going to be having monthly programming, so like a speaker series. So it'll be like a subscription based type thing, and we'll have like a monthly masterclass workshop, and then like a community either on Discord or Slack. And so we're really excited to be launching that later this summer. Um, and kind of hopefully be able to bring community led folks, so queer and trans folks together to really be the voice of this moving forward. Uh, and I have a business partner named David Matheny who is helping me kind of organize. He's also a digital marketing consultant, specifically in PR, and we're very excited for what's to come. So that's kind of a little bit about what I'm working on. So thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And everything that you're working on sounds really cool. So, one thing that you mentioned with your marketing agency is that you're working with social impact companies, nonprofits. So, it feels like you're very driven toward working with companies that have a mission, a purpose, not just like, hey, we're a random product kind of here. Maybe we're going to throw some stuff up on TikTok shop. When they come to you, and because we've talked about like marketing toward this community, is that like when you're onboarding a client or talking to somebody about working with you, and let's say they don't want to be inclusive to these communities, is that like a hard pass for you to not work with them? Or what's kind of your stance on that? Do you feel like every company should be marketing like very specifically to different communities?
I think that my thoughts and feelings on that are twofold. I'm becoming more of an established firm, so I'm able to turn away clients now. I would say when I officially launched my firm, instead of just doing freelance like 3 years ago, I took every client I possibly could. And that really led me to burnout because I didn't align with some of the clients. Um, so now I'm in a space, luckily, I'm so grateful that I can scale and that I'm able to turn folks away. But with all that said, I say that's twofold because I publicly make it very aware of my core values and my core commitments as a brand, as well as our stance on DEI. So, um, to play devil's advocate, I hope people that are, leads that are looking to work with me and that clients that have, contracts with me and that have proposals from me are very aware of the fact that our brand is LGBTQ plus owned and that they're working with the brand. Now, that's on, of course, our side of things. Working, when you get into the nitty gritty and working with them, especially on campaigns and deliverables and things like that, you can you start to pull back the curtain on a brand of their internal structure and how they function. And I have had to leave contracts because I didn't align with policies that were in place or the lack thereof of policies that were in place. So I think it's really like a holistic conversation of, yeah, marketing plays a huge part of it externally. How are you visualizing your brand to your target audience? But also that starts internally, right? Like that's the same thing as if we feed our body good food, like we'll be able to have better output. So I think like with that analogy or metaphor, if you will, whatever that was, um, I think that it's pertinent for brands to really work with consultants or and their in-house teams and facilitate a conversation of like what is the structure of this, right? Where like where do we have these gaps and where are these problems originating from? And a lot of that can do with policy that has been in place, whether it's marketing, sales policy, HR policy, um, client communication policy. Like, I think that's a huge part of the logistics of inclusive marketing campaigns.
Yeah, no, and that analogy was perfect. I'm gonna have to start using that with people because I think that just so clearly is what people are missing with half the people I talk to about their marketing or what we're doing on social media or what should be established in their brand guidelines and who their brand is versus like what we can just start pushing out on social media. Because I know, and we'll get into this later about like some brands just come out on Pride and rainbow wash everything and then
Mhm.
it all goes away after June's over. But it's like, no, like it's just like going on a juice cleanse one time, but you eat junk food all the time. Like that's not going to do anything for you. Like it seems nice in the moment, but like that's not long term health of your life and your brand. So let's just think about brands that maybe have never marketed to this community, don't know anything about it. Like, what are some misconceptions that they might have, or you know, what are the questions that you're getting from brands that are like, hey, like I feel like we should be marketing to this community, but I'm not sure what that would look like or how we can do it, or we also don't want to offend other people.
Hmm. I think for starters, a big, even with very progressive, supportive, inclusive brands, I think they ride a fine line of uh, how do they communicate visually and through storytelling the humanness of the queer community, queer and trans community, right? So that should always be the focus in the epicenter of the strategy, in my opinion, right? But it's also a problem politically. It his- Politically and historically, LGBTQ plus people have always been considered as of a lesser status. We've seen that in many examples across history and in present day, right? So I think where brands struggle is how do they not make it this big problem that they're always, this call, they don't want to make their calls to action about being inclusive always that it's a political problem, right? But it is inherently political, in my opinion. And you're never going to get away from that. So I think putting up an illusion is really not something that uh, benefits anyone because it doesn't build trust and people buy from people who they like, know, and trust. So kind of danced around there, but that's, I think, helping brands to understand how they really get to the core of what queer people want to be, and they want to be seen, you know, um, not just kind of, oh yeah, we like queer people and put them over here. Like that's what we've been, you know, we've been put in this box our whole life, right? Of like um, that we have to be, our authentic and our true selves because we have to like be this. And this is like, of course, in an ideal world, right? That equity would be a thing, right? And that we would be able to just like exist, right? Without this like this continued conversation, right? But um I think that's something that brands can really center is the stories of people and the true stories, not just, oh, this influencer's a gay content creator. You know what I mean? Like what has been their journey and how can that correlate with that brand's product or that brand's mission, or you know how can they really create partnerships? And that goes back to that like data driven storytelling, like, and because I'm a firm believer that like word of mouth marketing is going to convert so much better when you are referred to, whether that's, hey, I like this drink at Starbucks, hey, like this drink at my local coffee shop, hey, there's this boutique, hey, this nonprofit really has a great mission, you should get involved because this is how I volunteer, like really showcasing like how people want belonging, right? Like people crave that. So how do you showcase that? I think is a big thing for brands. Um, and again, that's such a nuanced conversation. So that's why I think having either a team member on your staff or a consultant that you're working with long term to continually develop these things um, makes you that much more of an inclusive brand, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, yeah, no, those are all great points. And are there any brands right now that you feel like are doing a good job of showing up and not just like, hey, we use this one gay content creator to do this one UGC video?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yes, I there are some pretty big brands. I went to Chicago Pride this weekend, um, And I was actually pretty surprised what big brands were there. I wasn't uh, aware of some of the big corporate brands that had uh, invested lots of money in like different things like McDonald's and like CBS and um, there was tons of them beyond just like the LGBT nonprofits that were there. Um, so that was really cool to see. And it looks like they bring people from that region that are like working for them in corporate and have them be a part of the parade. And like, I think that that was really, yeah, it's just in Pride Month, but it really showed like togetherness, which I really liked. But like digital marketing wise, I think like a great brand example that I've seen lately is North Face partners with Patagonia on a lot of intersection between the queer community and environmentalism. And I really think that they're invested in the long term in um, how they can market to and for the LGBTQ plus community. So that's a great example. I always look forward to seeing their pride campaigns every year because they usually are like interwoven throughout different collections they have. Um, During the year. Another example that I just like realized that I didn't even know I set this up years ago, but on my Lyft app, every time I take a ride, it donates to Human Rights Campaign, like a percentage. And I totally forgot I set that up, but I did. And so that's like partnerships like that, where that's long term funds and long term awareness that is being created. Um, through your like marketing and comms, right? So and product essentially. Um, so those are just two examples from like more of like a national standpoint and big brand. Um, a, a thing that I absolutely think is the best resource in the world. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Everywhere is Queer.
Mm-mm. I'll have
It's
to
an
look that up.
it's called Everywhere is Queer or EIQ. There's an app and it's a worldwide map of LGBTQ plus owned businesses. The founder's name is Charlie Sprinkman. I think he lives in Portland, and it's amazing. There's like 14,000 queer-owned businesses on there, and I always go to that app to like if I'm traveling to see like what's around me, and then I will go to those places because I just think it's such a cool resource that he's built. And so if you're a brand and you're listening to this and you are specifically LGBTQ plus owned or queer owned, trans owned, get on that map. Get on it because I feel like it's such a great resource. And he has a ton of different paid marketing opportunities on a sliding scale. So if you're looking to market to the LGBTQ plus community, I highly suggest that. Just a little pin for him.
That's awesome. No, I'll definitely have to check out that website because, especially when I'm traveling, I'm always looking for local businesses to check out and would love to support. So that's a really cool resource. So, yeah, and I definitely want to look more into Chicago Pride and what brand showed up for that and how that went. But outside of like North Face and Patagonia, are there any brands that you've seen that like really missed the mark? I feel like we've talked about Target a couple times and what they've
Mm-hmm.
done, or even, and I don't want to hate on people coming out with like branded merch just for the month of June because like there's all types of different seasons and holidays that people come out with branded merch. So I don't want to like try to compare that. But yeah, are there any brands that you feel like have really just kind of screwed it up recently?
I think Target really, before Pride this year, had a PR emergency, and I don't agree with several of the things that they did. I will say that they did put out Pride merch. They have their own Pride brand now. It's called Target Pride, but they only put it out in select stores. The one in my city, it was out. It didn't come out till the first week of June though. Like I would say, the 5th or 6th of June it launched. Um, but they really kept quiet on social. From what I could see, and then also, um, I don't know if you've heard of V, who's a reporter with Under the Desk News on TikTok and
Oh
Instagram.
yeah.
But V reported and shared some. videos from the brand Humankind. It's a uh, underwear,
Skincare?
undergarment, and
Oh, okay.
swimwear brand, and they've worked with Target before, and Target uh, like ended their partnership with them for this year, and there was the founder did a whole video, like behind the scenes POV on the situation, and it was really interesting um, to hear their perspective on that collaboration falling through the cracks, and like Target's response to basically the Target's response was, hey, our employees faced violence in our stores last year, and so we want to protect them by limiting where we put these pride pop-ups, right, with the products. And they wanted to move it all online, which, the community, a lot of people in the community were like, well, that's, you can't have it one of two ways, right? Like, and I get they want to protect their employees, and I support protecting employees, but like, we also don't know everything that goes on internally, right? Why they made those decisions. But to me, from an external point of view, an outsider, it just seems like, oh, like, we'll do it where the safe zones are in the more progressive cities, or communities where we feel that our employees aren't at risk, which, again, it's that nuanced conversation of how do you balance all that, right? And so I think, I don't think the answer is getting quiet, though. Like, I don't see that as, I see that as pushing it under the rug from a more human standpoint and a personal standpoint. From I understand it from a business standpoint. I don't agree with it, though. you know, I think I can understand and see things the way that they are, but I also don't have to agree with the strategy of and the execution of it all. So, and they kind of just didn't respond to a lot of interviews I read. Like, just they wouldn't respond to comments. So it's like, why are you trying to like push this away like it didn't happen, because it did happen? So I don't know. That was interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really love the corporate world, and there's so many politics with it and decisions, and I'm sure everybody that works there also doesn't fully agree with what they're doing, but
Yeah.
um yeah, I'll have to look more into that brand situation too, because that sounds, yeah, really really interesting. So you've mentioned working with entrepreneurs. We work with a lot of small businesses, and obviously we've talked about like, hey, there's some background work you should do within your brand and policies and things like that to make sure, like, for the communities that you do want to support and represent, like, how can you do that authentically through, your brand as a whole, social media, website, products, collaborations, everything. But let's say I'm a one person entrepreneur with a brand doing everything by myself. Are there any tips that you have of like, hey, I want to market to this community and I want to represent this community and appreciate them? Like, are there small things that people can do that it's not going to come off as just like a marketing ploy? Or
Yeah.
if they were to work with, a gay content creator, like, is there more than they should be doing than just that one campaign? Or like, should they always be giving money back to a nonprofit to support the community? Like, what are your thoughts on that, of like small initiatives like a solopreneur could take?
I think it starts with just taking steps, even if they're free steps, right? So I think, like, for example, I have a DEI statement page on my website, and I also have a core commitment statement on my website that clearly outlines like who I will work with, who I will not work with, what I don't tolerate, and the communities that I support. And then also at the footer of my website, I have LGBTQ plus owns, and then I have like a safe space, just nod, like text. And I'm a part of an organization that gives digital safe space stickers in Michigan. So I have that on my website. So it's always there. So people are very aware that, like, if they're hiring our firm, like, you're hiring a team of folks who like believe and support this. So I think like that's like for allies, just like personally, like you could wear rainbow earrings all year, like in your like in an outfit that you wear. You could have a pin like on your jacket, like small little steps that like are very visible that either you're an ally or you're part of the community and that you care, right? Like I think that's like bare minimum, like easy, pretty easy to do in my opinion. Then, like, of course, if you have the resources to give back to nonprofits, like whether that's like 1%, 5%, 10%, um, whatever is good for you, that's amazing. And I think like if you have the ability to do that, uh, do it, but do it when it's right for you and when it's able for you. I think that like again, going back to that long term strategy, I would rather have more money donated to nonprofits who do this work over time than like a quick fix. So, those are two things that I think are really great. And then, as far as like social media content and just like, I think a big thing is like nurturing relationships. So, like, what posts can you share? What person can you refer? What profile can you share? Who can you connect to who when you have that capacity? Um, I feel like that's more everlasting than, you know, posting one post for Pride Month saying we celebrate, which is also a good thing. It can be rainbow washing if you do it like over the top every year. That's all you do ever. But I think like again, I've said it 4 times today, but it's nuanced, right? Like and it's different for every brand. So how is it for you and your brand and what do you want to put out there? I think is like a huge part of that storytelling thing is like because when you tell that story, you're going to call the people in that you want to buy your product or that you want to support you or that you want to work with. So I think like that's continuing to be your most authentic self, whether you're straight, gay, bi, trans, you know, black, BIPOC, queer, you know, Asian American, like whatever, you know, wherever you come from, whatever your background is. I think like remaining true to your values is the best thing that you can do for yourself financially and marketing wise. Um, at least that's I've been lucky enough in the last year to really start to see the success of that, remaining true to my values. I found clients to work with that want to work with me because I am very I mean, I do a great job, but I also care really deeply about how I impact the world. So, it's not always easy to follow in those footsteps, but I would like to think that life would be really boring if we didn't um, follow in those footsteps. So, of
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, thanks for sharing all of this today. And
course.
hopefully, people got some really good tips on how they can be more inclusive with their content marketing. But I think our wrap up for the day is it starts with your brand and your policies and your statements of what you believe. And then I think, yeah, everything can somewhat come naturally after
Mhm.
that. But yeah, Cameron, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great